Hello and welcome to the Metagame with me, Oni Black Mage, here today to share some tips and analysis for the new jobs in Bravely Second. This will be spoiler free, so let's get started. Regarding the jobs of the game, there are now 30 classes, though several are removed, like the Spellfencer, Spiritmaster, or Conjurer, and replaced either with classes with similar abilities or entirely new ones. Jobs now cap out at 10 levels, but there is a crowning 11th level only unlocked once the final class is gained and leveled up to rank 2. Like before, outside Ball or optional bosses, there is no best team setup out there, allowing for tremendous flexibility, experimentation, or playing favorites. One of the new things that plays into Bravely Second is that players have multiple side quests, resulting in picking one class now and leaving another one for later, so when you pick up a class is just as important as which class you pick. Keep that in mind as you progress through the game. Acquiring JP is more limited now, as outside the JP upskill from Freelancer, the best way is taking advantage of chaining non-stop one-turn victor battles. I feel this way is fairly fast with grinding spots, so it is a comfortable change. Stats and aptitude bonuses have the same meaning in this game as they do in Bravely Default, and again, they are correctly displayed for gear, but vaguely and inaccurately conveyed for classes like in Bravely Default. If you're new to the game, I suggest clicking the link below to watch the first few minutes of the video I made for Bravely Default to catch up on the fundamentals, as I will be approaching this guide assuming you are a veteran or at least know the basics which haven't changed. It's still a very setup heavy game. Classes, stats, and abilities have been rebalanced and redistributed for this game, so many old strategies from Bravely Default will not work. Rather, this is a new test of setup tactics, as many bosses are now more adept in using Brave in Default as well, and you receive jobs in a completely different order from the last game. There are new weapon categories in the game, and each weapon has an inherent bonus against the monster group type. Take advantage of this for areas with common monster mobs or against bosses. Before we cover the jobs in greater depth, I want to clarify some of the jargon I use. When I talk about jobs, when I say primary class, I'm referring to the job you are actually equipped as, and when I say secondary class, I'm referring to the job command that you select from another class. So for example, if you had a knight with the command miscellany, that means that knight is your primary, with freelancer as the secondary. Like before, some classes, for stat or aptitude reasons, are better as primary classes, and some classes have great abilities that better serve other classes as secondary classes. For the prologue jobs, the Freelancer has a small but powerful assortment of very useful utility abilities, and even more handy support abilities. Though, given it provides no boost to any abilities until one gets the final class in the game, means that this is a class best leveled up to use as a secondary class, not as a primary. Despite being the first magic offensive class you get, the Wizard has the highest magic attack stat for the entire game, making it competitive as a primary class the entire game despite its weak list of offensive sweeper magic. Its main appeal is really the spellcraft ability, allowing one to transform any spell into any effect, allowing for tremendous potential and strategy. Since the Wizard is a great foundation, it is thus better boosted by spell lists from other classes, like Diabolism or Astral Time Black or White magic. It's the ultimate utility class for tactical mages. This early class is an all-out offensive attacker, alternating between massive damage with weapon tossing, or sacrificing defense equipment slots to instead equip up to 4 weapons and make full attacks with each one at half strength. Consider equipping the ninja's dual wield, as it will work for the head and body slot weapons as well, meaning you can make 4 sets of full attacks at full power. Since it focuses on mainly normal attacks, consider pairing it with the Fencer for the speed and offensive stance boosts, or HAWKEYE for a variety of ways to add elemental damage or defense ignoring buffs. The Ninja is a decent fit, allowing the class evasion options, but also raising hit count opportunities. The Ranger also has great synergy for its Berserk ability alone. As a secondary class, the Charioteer works surprisingly well for every class, as its weapon tossing commands are based on the weapon itself, not the user's stats, so any class now has a powerful and inexpensive attack option. This is a simple offensive class that focuses on 3 stances that boost either attack, defense, or speed, and powering up single strikes as they switch between them, constantly boosting itself. As a primary class, the stats are light but positive in all the right areas, making the Fencer a flexible option for offensive or utility roles. The defensive stance has a high counter rate with its support ability and can greatly benefit from the Swordmaster's countering strategies. The Pirate is another great choice for provoke, but also for its debuffing strikes. Monk is another good choice for a few high power strike options, as well as Ranger. As a secondary class, it's less flexible, as the Fencer is mainly useful for quick buffs at the start of a battle while attacking, though it is a decent self-buff option for martial, magic, and tanking classes. At first glance, the bishop can be mistakenly thought as a weaker white mage, but it actually has much better strength, accuracy, and health, with the same casting power, so it's actually more viable for fighting beyond spells. As far as spells goes, it is a watered down white mage list, better suited for beginning and mid game, but they are more cost effective spells, better suited for party maintenance. That being said, the bishop is a better choice in the white mage as a primary class, with white mage as a secondary than the other way around. The more powerful white and astral magic reinforces its role as support, but the bishop has a magic attack score the same as a red mage, so consider other magic classes like red, black, or time magic as a secondary. Because the bishop's spells are so inexpensive, it makes a great secondary class for any support role, including knights and templars that don't have much MP. Astral magic is all about single target buffing and protection magic. Naturally, the best choice is to take advantage of its deep MP pool and fix the single target nature by pairing it with the wizard and using spellcrafting to make it a sweeping effect instead, as well as give it some offensive options. The first comparison is to the performer, as it does many of the same things buffing wise, but the performer does it cheaper and in some cases with slightly less boost. With a decent magic attack and mental score, the Astrologian is a versatile caster that can work well with any spell list too, so tailor it to your strategy. As a secondary, however, the performer is much more useful for a group, so with the exception of the barriers, there isn't much reason to use this class outside support roles that want cheap single target buffing. Now for Chapter 1. The Catmancer is a variant of the Vampire from the previous games, as it allows one to learn and use enemy skills, but this time it costs consumable items to do so. It's a very well-rounded class that, like other jack-of-all-trades classes, wherein it can fit anywhere as a primary or secondary class. Its value, of course, only rises with the amount of work put into collecting its rather strong attacks. Note that it gains the HP plus 20% support skill and an incredibly cheap buff that maxes out one's physical and magic defenses for 10 turns, both of which can seriously help tanking rolls. The Red Mage used to be famous for its BP gaining tactics, and that's actually still the case. Despite being a well-balanced jack-of-all-trades, it's still a class leveled mostly for its BP support skills, as low-level white and black magic is really only useful mid-game. Thieves steal, and that's about it. There are new flavors for adding buffs and the quantity and variety of things you can steal, but it's a fairly straightforward class for those who like thieving. It does sport the highest dex in the game and among the highest agility, so it's fast and the most accurate class in the game. Still, outside that and the relatively cheap Godspeed strike attack, it can benefit from other speed hit classes like the Ninja and Charioteer, and basic attack boosters like the HAWKEYE. Focusing on powerful counterattacks, this class has great physical stats, especially defensively when assuming a countering stance. I highly recommend the Pirate for its provoke skill alone, as well as its powerful debuffing attacks and using its amp strike attack right after the Swordmaster's free lunge. The Fencer is more good synergy, not just for the offensive and defensive boosting, but also the high counter ratio for its defensive stance. Consider also the Ranger for its family type attacks for variety for cheap MP cost. As a secondary class is expected to draw aggro or take a hit like Monk, Knight, Guardian, or Templar work well with countering options. This time round, they rolled Summoning and Invocation into one roll, meaning that summons can either be used for moderate all-target attacks or maximizing every variety of stat. With the deepest MP pool in the game, the Summoner has the offensive magic attack and healing power to work well with any spell list in the game effectively, so it's a solid caster primary class using another spell list. Unfortunately, the high costs of its summons mean few, if any, classes should bother using the Summoner as a secondary class, even for Invocation, as they also removed boosted spot pass summoning. Chapter 2. A gun-wielding class, the HAWKEYE can boost its basic attacks by consolidating sweeping attacks, piercing defenses, or adding an element to weapons. Shamanism is arguably the best toolbox for every martial user in the game, as it provides very useful weapon bonuses that power and speed hit users can both benefit from. That said, it's unimpressive stat-wise, with only average attack, speed, or defense. As a primary class, consider the Fencer to shoot and boost stats, the Pirate for attacking and debuffing, or the Ranger for its berserking and slayer attacks. Still, while guns are the second strongest weapon class in the game, this is a class much better used as a secondary class to other stronger offensive classes. This class is all about inflicting every possible status effect and debuff in the game, though like the Catmancer, it consumes items to do so. It also boosts item usage, making them possible to be used on a group or to greater effect. As a primary class, it's surprisingly effective as a light caster, so consider boosting its effectiveness with Astral Magic, not only to get buff options, but the Lucky spell which will boost its debuffing as well. Performer also works since it doesn't have to compete for MP and can support the whole party. As a secondary class, it works well as an option for anyone, since it doesn't depend on stats or BP, especially tanks, as anyone can benefit from debuffing the enemy, and its decoration ability can draw all aggro to you. This class has heavy hitting healing and recovery, as well as the arrow line of spells. Its stat array limits it to a support role, but there are a few options depending on your strategy, as it does have a decent magic attack. Consider the wizard first for some light offensive options, but also creative spellcrafting added to your spell list. The performer for group buffing or PATISSIER for group debuffing adds some versatility to your spell lists. Since healing is something that is handled well by the bishop early on with better stats, the white mage is almost entirely more useful to other casters as a secondary spell list, at least to the bishop, summoner, astrologian, or yokai, who have the same healing power or deep enough MP pool with better stats. The merchant is all about spending and making money, and sees less use in actual combat and more for grinding. It does have an S rank in spears, so maybe having the Valkyrie class as a secondary does give it some offensive power. Otherwise, consider the Charioteer for offensive tossing or the PATISSIER for debuffing, as those classes have highly effective abilities regardless of a class's stat. Otherwise, its ability to buy BP directly is a useful skill for the setup of some long combos, though is better regulated as a secondary class. For your standard low to high fire, water, lightning, and dark damage, the Black Mage is your standard go-to. As there are more magic classes in this game, the only class with a stronger magic attack is the Wizard, which works since spellcrafting works wonders with the Black Mage list. Consider Time Magic for spell variety or PATISSIER to inflict elemental weaknesses on your foes. As a secondary class, the other offensive casters, namely Wizard and Yokai, benefit better with the Black Mage spell list, though any mage can make use of the elemental damage. This bow-centric class can work with either strong hits with its Slayer attacks against particular enemy types, or leverage its high agility for many multiple attacks. Bows are the third strongest weapon class in the game, so consider combining it with other speed hit classes, like Ninja or Hawkeye. However, the versatility of Berserk for speed hit classes, or Slayer attacks for power hit classes, means the Ranger works very well with any other martial class. The Knight is the go-to class for tanking roles, whose main strategy is shielding others with very high physical defense. It sports the very useful two-handed ability that many other classes can take advantage of, but short of the Guardian, no one has better raw defense than a Knight, so consider supporting it with the PATISSIER for not only drawing aggro, but also debuffing your enemies, or the Pirate for the same reason, but with more raw damage. Consider also the Swordmaster to work countering into your defending strategies, or Bishop to have an armored healer that is light on the MP usage and effective regardless of the user's mind. Unfortunately, the Knight is less flexible as a secondary class since few other classes have the defenses to support its abilities. As there are more magic users and bosses that are smarter about their BP, the Ninja isn't as overpowered as it used to be thanks to some balancing. Still, it is still a very versatile class that every other class can take full advantage of with its evasion abilities alone as a secondary. With the highest agility in the game, it will be scoring the most amount of raw attacks, so back it up with the appropriate skills from Hawkeye to take advantage of that. While it won't be a major spellcaster, the Ninja can still use the Bishop's cheap recovery spells while evading, or soften up the enemies with Pirate or PATISSIER. Consider also the Ranger's Berserk. So, again, ninjas are great for every class. Chapter 3. With the ability to revert HP, MP, and BP to previous values, the Exorcist is as tactical as they come, and will be as useful or as useless depending on your setup. Per its stats, it has the structure of a mage and can do well for any other support and recovery spell list like Bishop, White Mage, or Astrologian. However, for setups and classes that focus on burning a lot of HP, BP, or MP in one turn, like the Dark Knight, Valkyrie, Templar, Pirate, or Yokai, this class fixes the issue of running out of fuel. Thus, its abilities serve it better as a secondary class working into any execution you need. Monks are still very strong fighters with the strongest weapon class in the game and the stats to back it up, though they have a relatively weak skill set and it is better used as a primary class with few options for secondary. Fencer, Pirate, and Ranger give a good boost to its single strikes. Valkyrie and Hawkeye are great for attacking groups, and Dark Knight can work with its large HP pool. Unfortunately, it isn't flexible as a secondary class, as really only a few power hit classes should bother with its less than impressive skills. The Valkyrie is all about powerful spear-based attacks and sweeping attacks that cost a lot of BP. The trade-off is that the Valkyrie isn't targetable when it's in the air, so it's able to outright ignore most attacks. Still, with class abilities from Merchant or Exorcist, the Valkyrie can recover BP much faster, though power hit classes that don't eat up much BP, like Pirate or Charioteer, complement the class well. Unfortunately, the Valkyrie isn't flexible for classes outside its Crescent Moon attack, given its BP costly, spear-favoring jumps. Sporting the highest physical attack in the game and the lowest accuracy in the game, the Pirate is all about hitting hard and debuffing the enemy to hit even harder. HAWKEYE gives the Pirate a sweeping attack while also boosting its attacks, while SWORDMASTER and EXORCIST both give options to bypass the MP cost of double damage and AM strike. The Pirate is a great secondary class for any physical attacker too, as its strikes can soften up enemies and use MP the class wasn't otherwise using. Performer is the fastest and cheapest way to get various group buffs out there, though consider the large MP cost of each one since they no longer have the ability to cut MP cost. Consider the Bishop for a cheap way to support the party alongside stats, as well as the Time Mage for support and offensive spells. Also consider the Pâtissier for debuffing options as balancing, or the Charioteer for weapon tossing. While the group buffing is great, the problem is the class is very MP expensive as a secondary class, so keep that in mind if you plan on using it. The Time Mage has also been rebalanced with lower stats and removal of the overpowered Hasten and World ability. Still, Time Magic is a great spell list with a good mix of offensive support and utility spells, so it complements any caster as a secondary caster. It focuses on magic attack, but doesn't have a deep MP pool, so consider pairing it with Bishop for recovery options or Black Mage for more offensive options. With far fewer ways to recover HP while attacking, the Dark Knight has been balanced to still produce tremendous damage at large personal risk. Exorcist is the easy option to revert HP after burning it all, but Bishop can also recover large percentages for relatively cheap MP. Consider also the Pâtissier for applying Dark Weakness to foes. Unfortunately, the Dark Knight does not pair well with most classes as a secondary, though the Monk with its large HP and moves like Phoenix Flight might combo well. Chapter 4. The Guardian is a curious class. Its main use is possessing another person in battle, be it friend or foe, charge a separate meter called a soul meter which can be used for attacks, and even kill a foe and use its soul to boost its stats. Yet, it has the highest HP in the game, the absolute best physical and magical defensive stats in the game, with the worst speed, magic attack, and MP pool. The Guardian can actually be thought of as the best turtle in the game, and can benefit from a variety of secondary classes. Charioteer can use tossing regardless of stats. Pâtissier can debuff foes and draw aggro. Knight can take hits for the rest of the team very well. Or the Valkyrie can be used in conjunction with its S rank and spears. Because it has such a particular mechanic, the Guardian does not naturally work with most other classes as a secondary class, and will need a specific strategy to make its possession skills viable. Chapter 5. The Kaiser is the most imposing jack-of-all-trades class in the game, requiring careful strategies to leverage effectively. It's the only class besides a Master Freelancer that boosts every stat, and nearly all of its abilities affect friends and foes alike. With such a strong foundation, any class can be used with a Kaiser, and a Kaiser can be used with any class, though strategy is the core for its proper usage, otherwise it's a big waste. Chapter 6. This tanking class is more about taking advantage of braving and defaulting, as it also raises the BP cap. It's slower than the Knight, but has better defensive stats overall, while sporting better attack options. Naturally, the Knight is a great secondary class for it to shield others, while the Pirate is good for additional offense and provoke. Consider also the Bishop for recovery options, not using its otherwise costly BP abilities. As a secondary class, the Templar is an interesting option for other tanking and support roles, most of all for its Rampart ability. This is the final class of the game, with several endgame abilities, including unlocking the 11th level abilities for all 30 classes of the game. The Yokai is mainly magical despite having no deficiencies in stats, and as such sports a spell list with the strongest elemental spells in the game at tremendous MP cost. Consider MP mitigation classes for the secondary choices, such as Exorcist or the Swordmaster's free lunch. Truthfully, the Yokai can do any spell list in the game well, but its spell list can really only be handled by a few select mages, like the Wizard or Summoner. More likely, this class will be used for its super boss level spells and endgame grinding support abilities. Well, I hope all that helped. With 30 classes in this game, and many of them heavily rebalanced from the last game, this opens up many more opportunities for winning team combinations. Remember that there is no ultimate team combination, so have fun your way and feel free to experiment. If you have any great class combos, share them in the comments below, and check out my other series, Recapitation, which recaps stories from games like Bravely Default in case you forgot or missed out. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next battlefield.